Ciao a tutti
Hello, everyone, and welcome. How nice to see you here. There are so many of us, and we think there are 5,000, but maybe many more. But we will know the exact number only in a few hours, and we will definitely let you know.
ve lo faremo sicuramente sapere. Siamo in
We
Africa,
know that we are in Africa with Benin, Burundi, Kenya, and Madagascar, but also in Asia with India and Pakistan, in Central America with the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and in South America with Colombia and Brazil, and then, of course, in Italy, from Sicily to Calabria to Lazio, and finally from Abruzzo and Emilia Romagna. In short, a bit everywhere in the world. So, welcome again. Give to protect the environment in network. We are already a network on 4 continents. This is our first appointment of the 2021-2022 school year.
è diciamo così il nostro anno pilota.
So let's call it our pilot year, but we have a long history. Elena Pace will tell us about it.
Ciao a tutti.
Hello, everyone. So, how did the idea of doing this project come about? I started in 2008. At the root of it all was, it may seem strange to you, the desire to communicate to my students the key to being fulfilled, happy, and to contribute to building a world that is more livable and more respectful of our common home, the Earth. I am convinced that the human being has in his and her DNA the capacity to be a gift for everyone and everything around him and her, and therefore, by definition, for the environment. A gift for the environment, an environment that primarily includes not only ourselves, but also other human beings. And then, what is commonly understood as environment, the animals, the plants, the whole planet Earth, and the whole cosmos. But we, human beings, are an integral part of the environment. The same sentiment that leads us to despise, exploit, and discard human beings, producing that human degradation known as war, exploitation, and poverty.
Degrado umano che si chiama guerra, sfruttamento.
The same sentiment that is the opposite of the sentiment of gift has led us and continues to lead us to despise and exploit nature without limits, with the consequent environmental degradation that we all unfortunately observe today.
Purtroppo constatiamo. Quando con I miei alunni abbiamo cominciato a...
We realized that while we were wasting enormously, others didn't even have the bare necessities. So what can we do? How can we do something for them by giving something of our own?
Come fare qualcosa per loro? Dando del
And that's the idea behind the Energy Saving Pact. We save, yes, but to give and thus restore some balance to the planet. We have given a fixed monetary value for each act of energy saving, and these acts have been transformed into concrete help for peers living in situations of socio-environmental degradation.
Nei che vivono situazioni di degrado socioambientale. È stata un'idea
It was an idea that got the students very excited, and they commented on their experience in this way. It was all about the simplicity of the actions you can do, but from which you get a huge result and the satisfaction that you have helped the world to be better. And then they went on to say, the most important thing is that the culture of giving has entered into us, and it really feels like the solution to bring balance and health back to our planet.
per riportare l'equilibrio e la salute nel nostro pianeta.
So what did they understand? That we all have our share of responsibility, that we can all do something, and our happiness and that of others comes from giving. And when this gift spreads, we can help solve all crises, even the environmental one.
Delle crisi, anche quella ambientale. Negli anni
In the
seguenti,
following years, in the different schools where I was transferred, I proposed the project to my classes, and over the years, more than 1,000 students experienced it. An important moment was receiving in 2012 a prestigious award from the Ministry of Education and the Italian Inter-University Consortium of Chemistry for the Environment, which wanted to reward the work of awareness and scientific dissemination.
e di divulgazione
In
scientifica.
2019, however, there was an important milestone, the establishment of an institutional network agreement with other schools in various Italian regions, in which there were teachers who shared the same vision of the environmental problem. and sharing the project has multiplied its initiatives, impact, and the number of pupils involved.
Il numero di alunni coinvolti.
Since this year, with the help of an expert in planning, there has been a step forward, and the project has really taken off because it is spreading all over the world and reaching schools, many more schools, and groups of young people.
Più scuole e gruppi di ragazzi.
Come dicevamo, al centro del progetto.
As we mentioned, at the heart of the project is the Energy Saving Pact. The areas of action, as you know, are 5: saving electricity, water, gas, recycling and reuse, and reducing food waste. But how does it work? Each girl and boy receives a timetable with 200 boxes to check off for each action completed. This year, in addition to the timetable, we also have an app. Each action corresponds to 10 cents of euro here in Europe. But for example, it is 5 pesos in Dominican Republic, or 5 rupees in Pakistan.
5 rupie in Pakistan. E chi vi darà i soldi?
Who will give you the money corresponding to the savings? Normally, the children usually arrange this with their parents, but the sponsor can also be a relative or yourself.
Stessi che date del vostro.
After 2 months, everyone will have completed 200 saving actions and will have capitalized a sum that the sponsor will give him or her. And that will be used for an action of solidarity chosen by you with your class or with your group. On our website, you will find all the necessary material, the participating schools, the brochures in various languages, the solidarity project sheets, the flashcards for each area of action, and also the educational courses that schools are implementing.
Allora, grazie a
Thanks to Elena and Simona for this introduction. We have already entered the heart of the project, but this video conference can be called the butterfly effect. The flap of a butterfly swings in Brazil causes a hurricane in Texas was the title of a presentation that Edward Lorenz gave in 1972. A great mathematician and forerunner of chaos theory, also called the principle of sensitive dependence on initial conditions. The butterfly effect states that a chaotic system has infinitesimal variations in the initial conditions corresponding to significant variations in the future behavior of the whole system. In simpler terms, a small, seemingly irrelevant action such as the flap of a butterfly's wings is actually capable of having enormous consequences and repercussions on the system. But what does this concept of chaos theory have to do with the project? In fact, it would be very similar if we asked ourselves, could a small act of energy saving have positive consequences for the Earth's well-being? We asked this ourselves. To answer this and other questions, we have here with us Professor Gramenos Mastrogeni, who teaches environment and geostrategy in various universities and has been dedicated to the theme of climate change for over 20 years. Formerly the Environment Coordinator for Development Cooperation since 2019, he has been Deputy Secretary General of the Union for the Mediterranean based in Barcelona. He participates in major international negotiations on climate, biodiversity, water, and oceans. He has several publications. We recommend his latest book entitled The Butterfly Effect: 5 Ways Towards Happiness to Save Our Planet.
Gramenos, we know that you wrote the book The Butterfly Effect: 5 Ways Towards Happiness to Save Our Planet. You also work for the Union for the Mediterranean, and you wrote books about the butterfly effect. We know that the Mediterranean is a micro-world with its history, its climate, and nature, but also with its wars and its poverty. Is it still possible to protect our magnificent territory? How do actions on the other side of the earth affect the Mediterranean?
De la tierra al Mediterráneo.
Thank you. The Mediterranean is not just any spot when it comes to climate change. It is the second fastest warming region in the world, 20% faster than the global average. And the waters of the Mediterranean Sea warm the fastest. These measures may not mean anything, but scientists know that they involve impacts rather threatening. Due to this situation, for example, we expect in short time 250 million people in water scarcity, that is, with little water compared to their needs. At the same time, we expect a sharp increase in extreme weather events, such as the new Mediterranean hurricanes that hit Sicily. We also predict a rapid sea level rise of up to 1 meter by the end of the century, which is perhaps a little scary. But the end of the century is far away. But even only 20 centimeters within 15 years? 20 centimeters seem little, but they are actually a threat not only for the beautiful coastal cities, even fragile as Venice can be, but especially because this higher saltwater enters the coastal areas. We speak of saline wedge, and it salinizes them. It means that makes agriculture sterile. It can no longer be conducted on these lands, and if we consider that almost 40% of all agriculture in the region is conducted on the coasts, it is a big problem. To understand the real story, we should take a step back in history. The most important revolution in the history of mankind is not the Industrial Revolution. It is a revolution that happened a long time before, about 10,000 years ago, with the end of the last ice age, and it is the Agricultural Revolution. It was the moment when humanity went from a role of passive user of the ecosystem to hunter-gatherers, a role of a manager of the system, of custody of the earth, and it happened right in the Mediterranean. Not because there were more intelligent human beings in the Mediterranean, but because there were particularly favorable conditions here. When we talk about the impacts of climate change, the media mention 2 out of 3, but they are the 2 least serious, even if they are terrible. They talk about impacts on human physiology and health, and we have seen COVID, which is linked to natural degradation. Then there are other impacts on health that are not related to pathogens, such as heat waves that literally kill many elderly people. In Europe in 2004, if I'm not wrong, 30,000 people. Then the media talk about extreme weather phenomena that have an impact especially on our infrastructures. Hurricanes, water bombs, they create a lot of damage, even some victims. But the real problem of climate change is that it makes the climate completely unpredictable. While the Earth system has settled on predictable cycles on the basis of which we can organize human society, if I know when it rains, I can organize agriculture. If I don't know, it is not possible. If I know when spring comes, I can organize the territory. If I don't know it, it is not possible. It is not only something that concerns antiquity, also today and in non-agricultural contexts. For example, the manager of the aqueduct in a large city cannot plan the distribution of water if he has no idea when there will be snow on the nearby mountains. Therefore, the agricultural revolution happened with us because this large closed mass of water called the Mediterranean acted as a stabilizer of the climate, making it particularly predictable. Now, the situation is changing a lot. Not only do we have the series of impacts that are very threatening, but a warmer Mediterranean that stores a lot more heat, reverses its function. For thousands of years, it was the stabilizer that allowed us to organize ourselves and all these civilizations to flourish. Now, suddenly, it releases energy into the atmosphere and becomes the engine of chaos, the engine of unpredictability.
Ciao a tutti ragazzi, sono Eleonora.
Hi everyone, I'm Eleonora. Did you know that our project is also active on social? Who of you has Instagram or Facebook? I'm sure there'll be many of you. So what are you waiting for? Go now and follow us on our pages. Now, I'll explain how to do it. To follow our page on Instagram, simply search in the search bar and the name Dare per salvaguardare l'ambiente, all attached, without spaces, and without the words in rete. The first result should be Dare per salvaguardare l'ambiente, DPSAR. Click on it and follow our page by clicking on follow, and here you will see all the posts that we publish. And you can also participate by sending your content. Also on Facebook, you can also follow us by typing the name of the project, Dare per salvaguardare l'ambiente in rete. This time, complete and with the spaces. This is our page, and remember to click on both follow and like. So be sure to go follow us now and tell your classmates and parents and help us grow.
What more can we do to prevent climate change? What can we do? Partly we can't do anything because partly the damage is done, and these things will continue to exist and grow for some time. So what we can do besides agreeing globally to limit the damage is to adapt and prepare for change. And so, it's a nice surprise. One of those surprises that Mother Earth gives us. Science shows us something that we can do to cope with these changes. And that is, we have to put what we have in common. Nobody around the Mediterranean is strong enough, has enough resources to cope with such a vast and rapid change. We need each other. For example, the European Union wants to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. Well, it can't succeed without the solar potential of the southern shore of the Mediterranean, and the southern shore of the Mediterranean can't develop this solar potential without the northern markets, or there are plant species that for now are productive on the southern shore of the Mediterranean.
Che per ora sono produttive sulla sponda sud del Mediterraneo.
Well, we need it now on the North Shore because the North Shore is becoming like the South Shore. There is industrial knowledge that is mostly concentrated in the North, but there is a traditional knowledge that is just as important that is concentrated in a region in the South that for 6,000 years has managed arid lands. If you can go on the Silk Road, you will come across cone-shaped buildings. They are called yakchal, which literally means refrigerators. They were the buildings where the caravans deposited their perishable goods and keep the temperature inside between 0 and -4 degrees, without spending a single watt. The Persians had made gardens flourish in the desert with a system of channels that captured the moisture in the air. They are called kanat. We need it.
Abbiamo bisogno gli uni degli altri, di costruire un'economia.
We need each other to build an economy in which each person makes what they have available to the other. But there is a surprise. If we do this to counteract climate change, we end up counteracting the other problem of the Mediterranean as well. Because the Mediterranean has been a sea of great civilizations, but never a sea of peace, and this is due to the fact that the Mediterranean is a place where there are poor and rich people. There are those who can and those who can't. But this economy is precisely the economy that levels the differences. If we enter into a cooperative economy, everything is distributed better. These disparities disappear. And look at what a gift we give. what needs to be done to fight climate change. And in addition, we get peace.
Ciao ragazzi, sono ancora io.
Hi everyone, it's me again. So have you managed to get on our social networks and like our pages? We look forward to hearing from you, commenting, liking, or sharing content that will make up our new posts.
a comporre i nostri nuovi post.
Ciao, sono
Hi,
Lorenzo.
I'm Lorenzo from the second year of the Liceo Classico Gabriele D'Annunzio in Pescara, and my question is, we in the Dare to Safeguard the Environment in Network project care about the well-being of our Earth, which includes the people who live on it. Do you believe that we can all contribute to safeguarding the planet we live on? It's not that each of us can, and it's not even that each of us must. It's that we stand the only hope. People's reflection works like this. Climate change and environmental degradation are big problems, so the big people have to solve them. I can't do anything about it. The United Nations, the presidents, the cooperatives. But if we take a step back, what do the big people, the states, do? They make so-called measures of laws, of taxes, of international agreements that are just pieces of paper. And the ecosystem doesn't react to pieces of paper. These pieces of paper become meaningful only as a pathway for all of us to change our behavior. The solution comes from the sum of change in values and behavior on the part of all of us. There's no president who by decree can stop climate change. So the first question is, but do we really need to wait for the United Nations to tell us? Well, people don't. Why don't they? For two reasons. The first is that they feel like an insignificant drop in the ocean. But that's not true. The book you mentioned, The Butterfly Effect, proves that a personal choice of mine can become something that changes the whole system.
Può diventare qualcosa che cambia tutto il sistema.
And then the second reason why people don't do it is that basically they consider it a hassle, a sacrifice to become sustainable. I don't count for anything because I'm a drop in the ocean, and in addition, I have to make a sacrifice that counts for nothing, so I don't do anything. This is the conclusion. Except that there's a mistake there too. First, what you do matters a lot, and second, science shows us that any change in behavior towards sustainability comes at a strange cost. It makes you live better and with more money in your wallet. Then yes, it absolutely all depends on us.
Well, I see many of you have already entered. Well done.
Ciao, sono
Hi,
Mattia.
I am Mattia from the second class of Liceo Classico di Annunzio of Pescara. My question is, what can we concretely do for our planet?
Ciao, sono Sofia.
Hi, I'm Sophia, and this is my question. Is there any aspect of lifestyle that is easier to act on for a more sustainable future?
What to do? Well, there might be lists of the right things to do. Turn off the light, close the water. But nature relates to us in a much more articulate way, more beautiful than the list. Let's imagine that I am a father of a family and I live in a suburb of the city and I have to go to work. My suburb is not well connected with my work by public transport. Then I would have to use the car. But I make an effort and take the bicycle anyway. An hour and a half to go, an hour and a half to return. Well, if these 3 hours less become 3 hours less of presence in the family, become 3 hours in which you don't teach your children values, in which you leave them with a cell phone, then nature tells you, take the car. Please take the car. So it's not that simple.
Non è così semplice. Diffidate dei libri che hanno le liste.
Beware of books that make lists of good things to do or the videos.
Interrogare se stessi.
We need to question ourselves and find in our day some few gestures that correspond to 4 characteristics. The first and the most important is it makes me feel better for me. The second is it makes the people, the society, and the territory around me feel better. The third is that it is sustainable, with less impact on the nature around me.
Sulla natura intorno a me. E infine,
And finally, a fourth condition, which is to verify that it is beneficial for nature and society globally.
quest'ultima possiamo un po' lasciarla perdere.
We can leave this last one out for a bit. It's a checkbox because there are things that seem very useful in our context, but then have chains of repercussions that are harmful outside of it.
Di ripercussioni che sono dannose al di fuori. Quindi non esiste la regola.
So, there is no rule that you have to close the water, you have to turn off the light. There is a relationship between us and Mother Nature. And in this relationship, let's ask ourselves what makes me stay well. What makes the people and the area around me stay well. Thus, making nature more protected,
Protetta dove abito io.
where I live and throughout the world. We can do it, for example, every day, with a game, with a family, or alone.
Prendiamo un giorno e
Let's go one day and write down all the things that we can think of which could protect nature. At the end of the day, we will have a list of 70 to 80 small things that we can do. Then we put them each in this grid, which is a 4-box matrix. And we will find 2 or 3 that make me feel better and leave me with more money.
3 che mi fanno stare meglio e mi lasciano con più soldi.
They are beneficial to the community around me, protect nature, and do it both locally and globally.
Lo fanno sia a livello locale che a livello.
So let's just pick these 2 or 3 things, and if we all did that, the result would be that I would lose my job because there is no longer any need to go to the United Nations.
Many people are accustomed to feeding themselves on the products of intensive livestock and agriculture. How can we help them change course?
Possiamo farlo sì.
We can do it, yes, as long as we are selfish. Because if we are selfish, instead of quantity that is bad for us, we want quality that is good for me.
Poi però gli succede un altro di questi.
Then, another of Mother Earth's miracles happens. The quality that is good for me tends to coincide with the natural production capacity of each area.
Cioè, tu prendi
You take a region, you put a few cows on it, and they live a cow's life on the pasture.
mucche che vivono una vita da mucche sui pascoli. Non avrai tanto.
I wouldn't have a lot of meat, but you would have exactly the amount of meat that is good for each of the inhabitants, and with a big difference.
E con una grande differenza. Se tu metti
If you put all these poor animals and their truly inhuman lives and cubicles together, you have the production of unhealthiness.
un'azione di non salute. Queste mucche devono essere.
These cows have to be treated with a lot of antibiotics. So, that is where the resistance of the bacteria to antibiotics develops. These cows are next to each other, and the species jump and virus mutation happens much faster. Then these cows are reared using methods that require the creation of ammonia, which turns into particulate matter and gets into your lungs and causes cancer.
E ti provoca il cancro. E poi quando
Then when you have these farms with hundreds of thousands of specimens, you have a lot of transport. All the feed has to come in, and then you have to bring meat, whether it's alive or slaughtered, all over the place. So it produces carbon dioxide, which is bad for the climate. It also produces particulate matter, which is bad for you. But what does the cow do in the field? It gives you much better meat, very often also gives you a relationship of effect that is not insignificant. And guess what?
non è poco. E guarda un po'. Mentre la
Well, the cow on the farm is responsible for a major portion of climate change.
porzione importante del cambiamento climatico, la mucca sul
The cow on the field is helping to combat climate change because its manure fertilizes the earth, and by fertilizing it, makes more plants grow which absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
vegetali e i vegetali crescendo assorbono anidride carbonica dall'atmosfera. Allora,
Then if we choose to look at what we really need,
guardare di cosa abbiamo veramente bisogno. e di
and to
soddisfare
satisfy our taste, our pleasure as much as possible, little meat, which doesn't make me feel sick but good, really good meat. We do all this, but we also do something else. It's really strange. If we avoid the market that boasts of selling 1 million hamburgers a minute on the suffering of these poor animals,
sulla sofferenza di questi poveri animali, noi ci
then we also avoid the mechanism that creates 2 billion obese people in the face of 870 million starving people in a context where we produce enough calories to feed 11 billion people. Well, I eat a hamburger, and what am I doing wrong? To eat that many hamburgers, these cows need to be fed. And to be fed, you can't just feed them on the fields around people eating lots of hamburgers in rich countries.
persone che mangiano tanti hamburger nei paesi ricchi.
You have to cultivate the feed in other places as well. For example, by burning the Amazon or by buying land in poorer countries for very little money. And together with the land, you buy the water.
Assieme alle terre compri anche l'acqua. Quindi cosa
So what do? Your gluttony that hurts you, that much extra meat that intoxicates you, is the reason why other people don't even have that small portion that would be good for them. They lose their sovereignty over the land. They become people with precariousness, and even if we didn't want to make a human discourse, they cost us a lot of money. It's really strange. If we do not look at what we really need, which coincides with what the earth can give us, we create chains of injustice that we all pay for. Are we all terrified of immigration? But where do the immigrations come from? Just from those places where we have sent people off the land because we have to eat 5 hamburgers a day.
Allora, grazie al professor
So
Grameno.
thank you, Professor Gramenos Mastrogeni, for your very interesting insights. It does seem absurd to think that the slightest flap of a butterfly's wings can cause a hurricane on the other side of the world. But the theory of chaos studies complex systems, and the Earth is a complex system. It's unbelievable to think how many short or long-range consequences my daily choice causes, such as eating a hamburger.
Mangiare un hamburger. Inserire nella nostra alimentazione,
including in our diet 0-kilometer products, would solve a good part of the environmental problem.
A questo proposito,
In this regard, we connect with Laura Ubaldi, a young emerging singer-songwriter and friend of the project Give to Protect the Environment.
Io sono Laura Ubaldi.
I am Laura Ubaldi, and today I'm going to let you listen to a song that I wrote and composed. It is entitled A Kilometer Zero, and in this song, not only will I speak, but also the earth, which now more than ever needs the help and attention of each of us. Enjoy listening.
La terra è un bene prezioso, così come il corpo va curata ed amata in ogni secondo. Il pianeta è solo uno, lo guardo da vicino, è il mio migliore amico a cui salvare il destino. Amala, 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 vivila, 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 questa storia immensa che chiamano natura. Cercala, 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 curala, 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 con la tua impronta, l'arma più feconda. Sono io, sono qua, senti anche tu questa mia instabilità, non mi sento molto capita, tu cosa vuoi? Io voglio amare la vita. Sono io, sono qua, mi sale la febbre con la disumanità, muoio di caldo ma non per il sole, tu cosa vuoi? Io voglio un mondo migliore. Io voglio un mondo migliore. A chilometro zero voglio un arcobaleno fatto di tutti i colori che la terra ha. Se mi stringi la mano poi parla piano, che di per sé la natura qualcosa ha detto già. Se vuoi respirare non far cadere dall'anima la rabbia di città, che per colorare un mondo migliore basta la volontà. Amala, 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 vivila, 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 questa storia immensa che chiamano natura. Sono io, sono qua. Senti anche tu questa mia stabilità. Non mi sento molto capita. Tu cosa vuoi? Io voglio amare la vita. Sono io, sono qua. Mi sale la febbre con la disumanità. Muoio di caldo ma non per il sole. Tu cosa vuoi? Io voglio un mondo migliore. Io voglio un mondo migliore. Per te, per me, per tutti. Per te, per me, per tutti. Che siamo qui e vogliamo spenderci. Per te, per me, per te che. Per me, per te che. In un attimo ci ritroviamo in un tossico gas quotidiano. Amala, 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 vivila, 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 questa storia immensa che chiamano natura. Sono io, sono qua. Senti anche tu questa mia stabilità. Non mi sento molto capita. Tu cosa vuoi? Io voglio amare la vita. Sono io, sono qua. Mi sale la febbre con la disumanità. Muoio di caldo ma non per il sole. Tu cosa vuoi? Io voglio un mondo migliore.
Grazie alla nostra Laura.
Thanks to our Laura Ubaldi. You have given us a really beautiful song and words full of commitment. Thank you, Laura. In Italy, one would say that the time has come to roll up one's sleeves, which means that one has to make a concrete effort.
Inoltre, solo attraverso i nostri social
Furthermore, only through our social networks will you be able to access and download our project app. Once you click on the link to download the app, it will ask you several times to give your consent. Don't worry, this is a secure app that has been created especially for this project, so always accept and you'll be able to download the app without any difficulty.
Le domande
Our questions for our experts are not finished. This time, we have two experts with us. Professor Luca Fiorani, a lecturer at the LUMSA, Marconi, Roma Tre, and Tor Vergata universities, is the author of numerous articles and patents. He has edited 2 publications on the application of lasers in environmental monitoring and represents Italy in the protection of the Arctic marine environment, working group of the Arctic Council, and has also been invited to participate in the editorial boards of specialist journals and International Congress of Experts in the sector. We also have Professor Stefania
la
Papa,
professoressa Stefania Papa, docente di ecologia applicata presso l'Università degli
Professor of Applied Ecology at the University of Campania Luigi Vanvitelli. Both Luca Fiorani and Stefania Papa are also great friends of ours in the project,
Gli diamo veramente un grande
and we really welcome them and thank them for their participation in answering the questions that our students will and have asked from all over the world.
e hanno fatto da tutto il mondo.
I am Elena from the second year of Liceo Classico Gabriele di Annunzio in Pescara, and this is my question. Can nuclear energy currently be considered ecological? If not, could it become so in the future?
L'energia nucleare potrà
Can nuclear energy become ecological? Is nuclear energy ecological? This is a very current debate. Nuclear energy, as we have it today, is a nuclear energy that does not emit or emits very few greenhouse gases naturally.
serra. Naturalmente, come dicevo,
As I said before, any economic activity emits a minimum of greenhouse gases. But it is true that this energy essentially emits few greenhouse gases. So, from this point of view, we could consider it ecological. But it is true that it is a form of energy that produces nuclear waste, which has a long life and must be treated with great care
essere trattate con molta attenzione perché sono
because it is very dangerous if released into the environment,
nell'ambiente, pericolose
dangerous for the health of humans and nature.
salute della natura. Ora questi
Now, these problems could be reduced by fourth-generation nuclear power, but this is still a scientific study that has yet to be carried out.
ancora non è stato realizzato.
So, we can say that nuclear energy could probably become much less impactful, but it still takes large and lengthy studies to achieve this kind of result.
Studi per arrivare a questo tipo di risultato. Fin qui
Until now, I have been talking about nuclear fission, as discovered by Enrico Fermi, a great Italian physicist. There is actually another way of obtaining nuclear energy: nuclear fusion, which is the method used by our sun. Then maybe ask your professors for a more detailed explanation of what fission and fusion are.
fusione e su che cos'è la fusione. Detto
To put very briefly, fission consists of splitting heavy atoms and thus obtaining energy. Fusion consists of taking light atoms, more precisely nuclei, we should say light nuclei, bringing them together, fusing them together, and obtaining energy from this process.
e ottenere da questo processo energia. Il Sole fa
The sun does this, but the sun has the good fortune of being able to have its nucleus at millions, tens of millions of degrees of temperature, which is very difficult to achieve on Earth. So, we are working on it. We are trying to build nuclear fusion reactors, but still, the road scientists who deal with it tell us clearly is very long.
lo dicono chiaramente, è molto lunga.
Buongiorno, sono Valeria Salve della prima LH.
Good morning. This is my question. Who specifically deals with environmental protection?
Allora, le istituzioni
The environmental institutions that are responsible for protecting the environment are ministries, public bodies, both local and regional, as well as research bodies or organizations linked to them. Think of all the environmental associations, such as Greenpeace, the WWF, Legambiente, but you've also heard a lot about Fridays for Futures, and many others. Certainly, protecting the environment is important because what does it mean to protect the environment? It means, in some way, making a concrete and constant commitment to improving the living conditions of every single citizen, and therefore, practically, all of us.
singolo cittadino e quindi praticamente anche di tutti quanti noi.
So were you able to download the app? Don't give up, it's not that hard. Come on.
Hi, I'm Michele from Class 2C Computer Science and Telecommunications. My question is sustainable development against scientific and economic technological progress? Sustainable development and technological and economic progress are not contradictory. On the contrary, this is very important. Without technological progress that enables us to make better use of natural resources and reduce pollution, sustainable development will not be possible.
Non sarà possibile.
With regard to economic development, the issue is very complex and depends above all on how we measure the performance of our economy. Today, we rely on one indicator: the gross domestic product. This indicator has flaws.
Dei difetti.
Bob Kennedy, you may have heard of him, in 1968 spoke of the flaws of the gross domestic product because the gross domestic product measures everything that is produced in a country in a certain sense. But it fails to capture the damage that the country causes to the environment in order to produce those goods and services.
L'ambiente per produrre quei beni e quei servizi. Ecco allora che
This is why we need to get a better understanding of economic development as a world. Probably countries will need to get together and figure out how to better measure the economy to take into account environmental effects. Do combustion cars, electric cars, or hybrid cars produce fewer emissions?
The question of whether electric cars emit more or less carbon dioxide than cars with an internal combustion engine, considering the whole life cycle, it is widely debated in the scientific literature. A recent study comparing different engines that took into account energy consumption and CO2 emissions on a fairly large fleet of 45,000 cars for sale showed that electric cars emit less carbon dioxide overall than combustion cars. Notably, 19% less than petrol cars, and 18% less than diesel cars, and 9% less than hybrid cars.
Benzina e il 18% in meno delle auto a diesel e il 9% in meno delle auto ibride.
In reality, however, it is necessary to take into account also for the comparison the energy mix. For example, all the sources used to produce the electricity. Now, certainly, in recent years, the weight of renewable energies has grown considerably in Italy, but also globally.
E naturalmente questo ha contribuito a rendere le auto elettriche, potremmo dire, più ambientali.
And, of course, this has contributed to making electric cars more environmentally efficient. This trend is the result of technological innovation,
Economiche, fatte per esempio dalle famiglie.
but also of the economic choices made by, for example, households, energy production companies, and public policies. Now, to the extent that the importance of renewables continues to somewhat grow, the advantage in terms of contribution to climate change of electric cars over, for example, cars with an internal combustion engine and hybrid vehicles will certainly increase.
I veicoli ibridi.
Salve, sono Elisa Carnemare della classe prima L.
Why is environmentally sustainable production more expensive for a company than one that does not implement it?
una produzione
An environmentally sustainable production is more expensive for a company because we do not include the damage we cause to the environment in our production costs.
danni che provochiamo all'ambiente.
Let's imagine that I produce vegetables or fruits using methods that pollute the environment, and I manage to sell these vegetables and fruits at the lowest price.
A vendere questa verdura e questa frutta a un prezzo più basso.
But I have polluted the environment. Who pays for this pollution of the environment? Society as a whole, not me who produced that fruit or vegetable.
Ecco allora che io ho messo alle
So, I have left the costs out and passed them on to the rest of society.
economisti parlano di
Economists talk about externalities. Well, we have to make sure that these externalities no longer exist.
i costi sull'ambiente.
We must ensure that the costs to the environment are paid by those who produce them. So then, producing in an environmentally sustainable way will also become profitable, as it should be.
Salve, sono Melissa Polacci del primo LH del liceo Jim Joyce.
My question is it true that producing mobile phones is polluting the environment because of CO2 emissions?
Qualsiasi produzione produce
Any production produces CO2 emissions. Why? Because we need energy to produce, to get raw materials, to process raw materials, to transport a product to market. For all economic activities, we need energy.
energia oggi per 3/4
3/4 of our energy today is produced by burning coal, oil, and gas, and by burning fossil fuels. we emit greenhouse gases. So, practically, all our economic activity affects the environment because we emit greenhouse gases.
I'm Malishpa, and my question is that in many countries, children are dying because of drinking polluted water contaminated with bacteria. Water pollution is particularly affecting the poor who do not have water and do not have the possibility to buy bottled water. It is also true, as Pope Francis also said in Laudato Si, that most of the people are affected are the poor from the aggression of environment. So, do you know the experiences about this, or you know any cases about this thing, how they have recovered or have recovered positively? Thank you.
Purtroppo, ad oggi,
Unfortunately, today, in addition to water pollution, there are other environmental disasters. Think of floods, droughts, landslides, cyclones, and hurricanes, which to date have killed around 240,000 people. If we add to this wars and even COVID-19, the numbers are soaring.
e anche il Covid-19 e numeri.
Sadly, however, as you pointed out, it is the developing countries, even the poorest ones, that have the highest number of victims. Consider, for example, that today there are more than 25 million people forced to leave their living environment because of environmental
Ad
problems.
oggi ci sono più di 25 milioni di persone costrette ad abbandonare il proprio
Environmental problems caused by extreme poverty, but also by climate change, by disastrous infrastructural interventions that have also had a profound impact, for example, on crops, livestock, food prices, and
provocato
livelihoods.
anche un profondo impatto, per esempio, sui raccolti, sul bestiame, sui prezzi del cibo, sui mezzi di sussistenza.
But in today's world, where there is enough food to feed everyone if distributed fairly, it is truly scandalous that millions of people should suffer from malnutrition and hunger, especially children.
Debbano soffrire di malnutrizione e di fame, soprattutto i bambini.
There are several humanitarian organizations, but just recently, I happened to read about an Italian humanitarian organization, GOPI, which currently has 10 humanitarian assistance projects underway, mainly to prevent disasters in the most fragile areas of the planet.
Ai disastri.
In particular, I read about projects in Peru, Guatemala, and Bolivia, with the support of the European Community, and also with the support of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
E in particolare hanno attiva attualmente una campagna.
They are currently running a campaign called The Right Environment Makes Development Happen, to raise awareness of the importance of the environment, especially in combating poverty and helping these populations, and above all, to ensure that there is always greater fairness and that we can play our part in this.
Possiamo effettivamente fare la nostra parte in tutto questo.
I am Giorgio from Liceo Classico Gabriele D'Annunzio of Pescara. This is my question. Why does pollution affect climate change?
Quando noi parliamo di inquinamento,
When we talk about pollution, we can understand it in two main senses. If we talk about pollution in the strict sense, we are talking about the emission of dust and of those gases that are toxic for us and for the nature. Always limiting ourselves to the atmosphere, because then we could talk about the pollution of water, soil, etc. From a strict point of view, this dust These noxious gases do not correspond to CO2. CO2 itself is not toxic to our body, but it is a pollutant.
Non è tossica per il nostro corpo. Ma perché è un inquinamento anche la CO2?
But CO2, carbon dioxide, can cause a change in temperature. The greenhouse effect, which in turn generates this increase in temperature that has all the negative effects, like drought, the increase in extreme weather events, which are so dangerous for our planet.
Degli eventi meteorologici estremi che sono così pericolosi per il nostro pianeta.
Hi, my name is Samuele Marini, and I attend First H Joyce Liceo Linguistico, and I would like to know what is the greenhouse effect.
L'effetto serra.
The greenhouse effect is nothing more than the phenomenon of warming of the Earth due to the presence of gases in the atmosphere, in particular the natural greenhouse effect, water vapor and carbon dioxide. What do these gases do? They allow the solar radiation to penetrate inside the atmosphere, but at the same time, they prevent the exit of a part of that same radiation that, once arrived on the surface of the Earth, reflects towards the space. This phenomenon in itself, as we have said, is natural, and has therefore in some way allowed the development of life on Earth. In fact, if there was no natural greenhouse effect, the average temperature would be about 15 degrees below zero. The problem lies in the excessive increase in the emission of greenhouse gases, in particular, an increase in carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. An increase caused by whom? By humans. It is linked particularly to energy production, vehicle traffic, industrial activities, with the consequent increase in global warming and all the effects linked to the rise in temperature.
Legati appunto all'aumento della temperatura.
Ciao, buongiorno a tutti.
Hello, good morning everyone. Hi, I'm Jennifer Huertas, science teacher at International School of Santo Domingo. And here next to me are students and representatives from 150 students from the school. Here is Gabriela, who has a question for the expert.
Hello, so my question is, what might be the consequences of climate change if we continue in the path that we are in?
Quali sono i fenomeni già presenti nei paesi più colpiti dai cambiamenti climatici?
Le conseguenze più...
The most direct consequences of climate change will occur on the natural level. The first consequence of warming temperatures, for example, will be desertification. For example, we will see certain regions of the planet become increasingly deserted and deprived of water, with serious repercussions on plant life and then on the lives of animals and human beings.
Ripercussione sulla vita delle piante e poi quindi sulla vita degli animali e degli esseri umani.
Another direct consequence of climate change will be, we see it already, is the increase in the frequency of extreme weather events. So more and more powerful hurricanes, more frequent perhaps in regions of the planet where these phenomena were rare, and therefore destruction, death, problems for our societies.
E quindi distruzione, morte, problemi per le nostre società.
But we can also think about the impact of climate change on biodiversity. So, an impact that means the loss of some species. We humans, not only because of climate change, are causing the sixth mass extinction, but, if you like, these are the effects on the natural environment. But then we have to look at all those effects on our society that are induced by climate change. So as the first cause, think of the social tensions, the increase in poverty. Of course, if we can no longer cultivate in a certain region because that region becomes desert, poverty increases. Social tensions increase. Conflict processes can be triggered within a society that can lead to wars. Think also of migration, because people are certainly trying to escape from regions of the planet where it is difficult to sustain life because, as we have said, there is desertification underway. So you see, there is a whole series of potentially very important and upsetting effects. Will livestock and agriculture be affected by climate change in the future? Livestock breeding and agriculture are already suffering the effects of climate change. We have to imagine that if the temperature rises, if the rainfall patterns change, we will have major changes in livestock breeding and agriculture. Think of regions on the planet where drought is destroying crops and driving entire populations into poverty and hunger. These phenomena are already occurring and will become increasingly critical as time goes by and temperatures rise. I am Akabasi Anastase, Director of Coordination of Schools and Vocational Training Centers. We want to give a special place to the protection of the environment and biodiversity.
We want to recover and transform rubbish into objects, organic fertilizer, and art are objects.
I am Valerio from Liceo Linguistico Joyce. My question is, in the future, will climate change have only negative effects, or will there be at least one beneficial consequence for our planet? It is clear that climate change as a whole will be negative for the planet, but we can imagine that in certain regions of the globe where ice currently reigns, the arrival of milder temperatures will be positive, but this effect will be localized only in those regions. So, even if there is an advantage, perhaps for our Siberian friends who will be able to cultivate where today there is only ice, in the end, there is no advantage for the planet as a whole. That is that the balance is not positive.
My name is Miriam Benjamini, and I attend the second class of the secondary school in Pretalia Sontana in the province of Palermo. My question is, how do we solve the problem of global warming?
The problem of global warming can be solved with two strategies. Scientists basically call them by two names: mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation means that we have to make sure that our production processes do not emit any more greenhouse gases. And here, the road has been started for many years. A milestone on this road is the Paris Agreement of 2015. Basically, all the nations gathered in Paris during a conference and decided to make sure that the temperature of the planet does not increase more than 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees at the end of our century. How? Reducing the emission of greenhouse gases. Therefore, countries aim to have greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and eliminate them completely by 2050. This is the first strategy. But even so, the temperature of the planet will rise by 1.5 to 2 degrees by the end of the century. So, we have to start adapting to a change that is already underway. Think of what Venice is doing. Climate change is causing the sea level to rise. In Venice, they are completing a mobile dam that you have heard about, the Moses, which comes into operation when there are conditions that can bring high water to Venice.
Quando ci sono quelle condizioni che possono portare l'acqua alta a Venezia.
That's when you practically adapt. You know that change is taking place. You know that it is causing effects. So you take action against these effects. So with these two strategies, we think that as humanity, we could do it. Hello, I am Giovanni from the second class B, Construction, Environment and Territory, ITET, Girolamo Caruso of Alcamo. My question is the following. Do energy-saving actions that involve sacrifices besides well-being for the human community have immediate effects on my personal well-being?
Sappiamo tutti
We all know that a significant part of energy, where does the energy produced end up? It ends up in our homes, where it is used to heat rooms, to heat water, to provide electricity, but also to operate household appliances, our computers, our smartphones.
smartphone. Ora, gli atti di risparmio energetico non solo possono
Energy-saving measures can not only make our homes less polluting, but also less expensive.
se consumare meno vuol dire aiutare
In
l'ambiente.
fact, if consuming less means helping the environment, and thus producing well-being towards the human community, virtuous behaviors help to reduce the cost of bills and thus have an immediate impact on what you refer to as personal
Quello che
well-being.
voi indicate come benessere personale.
Siamo alunni di un tecnico chimico.
We are students at an environmental chemical technical school in Acri, Calabria. For a few years now, our school has taken part in the European Week for Waste Reduction, which takes place last week in November. For all of us, it has always been very interesting and stimulating to work together with discarded objects, with poor materials, with objects that lay in the cellars, new and unused, in order to make new, beautiful, and useful objects for many people. We collect plastic caps and then we deliver them in our area to an association which, by selling them, is able to meet part of the food needs of the Kenyan population. Our question: all this is a good experience that unfortunately we think will end with the school. Unfortunately, we see that in Calabria, it is becoming more and more difficult to find companies that can help us in this recycling activity. We feel that we are part of a nation, but we often feel left out. How can we be more and more active and involved and not end this activity?
Sicuramente questa bellissima
This wonderful experience told by the Calabrian Technical Institute certainly tells us that these young people have acted on themselves. Because through this activity, they have learned something. They have internalized the great importance of reducing waste. They say, but will it end here? No. It won't end here because today you are students. Tomorrow you will be entrepreneurs, you will be teachers, you will perhaps be legislators. Then you will be able to influence even more. And here we come back to the powerful theme of the ability that we have as a society by coming together to push on the legislator, to push those with economic power. With our critical consumption, we can convince producers to make what they put on the market more environmentally friendly. Look at the advertisements today. All manufacturers have become environmentally friendly. Let's hope it's really true and that it's not just publicity. But they are certainly doing something. Why? Because they are driven by our opinion, by public opinion. And so environmental policies become part of government's agendas. Because we have become more aware and responsible, and political parties know that if there is something environmental in their program, we will vote for them more willingly. Therefore, we must not be catastrophists. We must know that we have a strong, difficult, and long task ahead of us. But we must go ahead with optimism and with hope. We must go forward and not give up.
Con speranza dobbiamo andare avanti e non arrenderci.
We have participated in conferences such as the one organized by EcoOne on Integral Ecology and the One People, One Planet Marathon, and in numerous conferences from the one on the state of the Italian coast to the last one on invisible waste.
Concretely, in 2019, we made plastic meters, one for each series in our school, and estimated that each site used and then voted for about 16 grams of plastic each week. Now, assuming that 1 kilogram of plastic corresponds to 6 kilograms of CO2, we estimated that in the entire school year, our school puts about 5,000 kilograms of CO2 into the atmosphere, which is a lot.
And as a result of participating in a competition, we won 2 drinking water vending machines. Now, almost all our 1,000 students are equipped with a water bottle, so as a result we have almost completely eliminated the use of plastic from our institution.
We have also collaborated with many other students at our institute to the cleaning of the beaches of our territory. I am Ludovica Gismondi from Class 3C at the James Joyce High School in Aricia, and we wonder how masks are recycled correctly, and what is being done in Italy and the rest of the world to correctly recycle them.
Allora, prima di rispondere come si riciclano le mascherine.
Before answering how to recycle the masks, I would like to explain a little about how they are made. The masks are generally made of a filtering part in polypropylene, which is a special plastic, consisting of 3 layers for surgical masks, 4 to 5 layers for FFP2, up to 6 layers of FFP3. The nose part, on the other hand, is usually made of metal wrapped in plastic. Now, there are actually the elastics, but the elastics are also quite heterogeneous. Of course, all this involves a process of separating materials, which certainly complicates recycling. Until now, the indication of the National Institute of Health is that masks should be disposed as a undifferentiated waste. Worldwide, several startup research centers and universities are working to find solutions, in particular, to recycle polypropylene contained in the masks. For example, in Italy, at the University of Turin, a Thermo-Mechanical recycling process has been developed from which plastic objects can be obtained, such as computer keyboards, stools, but also covers, for example, of smartphones and many other objects. There are 2 steps to make this possible. First of all, single-use masks should be separated, at least in those places where it is easier to collect waste. Think, for example, one place could be schools or industries and factories. The second step is their sanitization, and then thermomechanical recycling. In France, they are collecting used masks in strategic locations, such as pharmacies or shopping centers, and then leaving them in quarantine for 4 or 5 days. After removing the nose clip by hand, they are crushed in a special machine and then sterilized by passing them through an ultraviolet tunnel.
Poi vengono sterilizzate facendole passare in un tunnel a raggi ultravioletti e il passaggio successivo è la miscela con una resina speciale.
The next step is to mix it with a special resin to harden the material to the right consistency. In this way, a variety of objects can be produced, including anti-COVID. Think, for example, of the transparent protective visors that have been used in public places for the last 2 years. For example, Australia, they're working on a system to turn masks into asphalt.
Formare le mascherine, per esempio, in asfalto. In particolare l'Università di Melbourne sta progettando di costruire una...
The University of Melbourne is planning to build a road with this material, and there are already local companies interested in this. In fact, it has been shown that masks have some properties that could be described as surprising, such as tensile strength and ductility. So with this purpose, it could also provide greater strength and flexibility to roads.
In qualche modo fornire maggiore resistenza e flessibilità anche alle strade.
We are fine, thank you.
Thank you, and you?
Très bien.
I am very well.
Jodia, nous venons continuer pour garder comment pour nous faire pépinière pied bois. Qui laisse qui a expliqué comment pour faire nos pépinières pied bois? Qui peut un bagage nous faire?
Na piquer terre.
Na piquer terre. Deuxième bagage.
Nous passer tami.
Et troisième bagage.
Nous mettre na sachet.
Quatrième bagage.
Nous mettre sur la table.
Ok. Et qui ça nous continue à faire pour que tu continuer à vivre?
Nous user.
Après nous faisons user les livres grands, qui ça nous fait?
Nous
n'a transplanté li, d'accord. Eh bien, jodi a, qui ça nous vient faire? Vous allez expliquer nous? Nous venons mettre en pile petit pied plante dans sachet pour nous mettre en seul côté, une façon pour nous bien user. Est-ce que nous d'accord?
Oui.
Eh bien, on continue à faire activité nous pour faire aujourd'hui.
Protecting the environment means protecting biodiversity.
Protéger l'environnement, c'est donc protéger la biodiversité.
Protéger l'environnement, c'est donc protéger la biodiversité.
Who is responsible for making the environment more beautiful? We are. Who is responsible for making the environment greener? We are.
Ok, dans quelle école nous sorti?
La cette famille.
Dans quelle classe nous y?
8e année.
Ok. Alors, nous commençons aujourd'hui, pas vrai?
Oui.
Et nous continuons. Pas oublié? Oui. Nous continuons. On nous battons bravo pour ça.
Good morning. My name is Daniele Polizzi and I attend the 3rd class of the secondary school in Petralia Sottana, in the province of Palermo, of which I am the mini-mayor. Our question as an institute is, in recent years, the Madoni area has been tormented by numerous devastating fires which have wiped out thousands of hectares of forests and vegetation, centuries-old trees and endemic species of which very few specimens remain in the world. We watch helplessly as this massacre is perpetuated every year. At school, we had the idea of making our own contribution by planting a devastated green area with new trees, hedges, and other vegetation. What else could we young people do to prevent or limit this ferocious attack on the environment? Furthermore, in recent days, landslides have been recorded in the Madonita territory, including our village, which have led to the evacuation of several houses. We are very worried about the future of our territory. We wonder whether these landslides that have occurred could be closely related to the numerous fires that annually destroy the vegetation, the economy, and the environmental balance of the Madoni territory.
Annualmente distruggono la vegetazione, l'economia e l'equilibrio ambientale del territorio madonita.
Allora, rispondo alla prima domanda.
You ask me what you can do to prevent or limit this vicious attack on the environment.
Allora, sicuramente è molto bello quello che avete
It is certainly very nice that you have thought of organizing this planting of new plant species, and above all, it is very nice that you have asked the foresters,
forestali, perché loro sanno benissimo, per esempio, che alcune specie di alberi,
because they know very well, for example, that some species of trees regenerate surprisingly quickly after a fire. Therefore, The choice of plant species is also fundamental to planting.
Nel perseguire quelle che sono le necessarie pratiche selvicolturali. Ora, quello che sicuramente potreste fare è
And above all, their knowledge is a guarantee for following the necessary silvicultural practices. Now, to what you could certainly do is to promote more and more care for everything around you. One of the first effects of care is definitely not to leave rubbish on the edge of the forests, because they can be a fire hazard themselves. But at the same time, have an attitude of respect in the forest.
Bosco, non buttare per esempio materiale che può essere esso stesso comburente all'interno del bosco. Se per caso,
for example, do not throw away material that may itself be a combustive agent in the forest.
di sigaretta all'interno del bosco.
If by chance you are accompanying adults who smoke, avoid throwing cigarette butts into the forest, as this could be the means by which the fire develops. Of course, if you can behave responsibly towards the environment around us, if we can protect and help others to do so, this helps us not only to protect our own health, but also to protect all those who will come after us. We will be able to be guarantors of life for ourselves, for future generations, and also guarantors of a better life. Then, as far as the issue of land size is concerned, you see, boys and girls, several studies show that forests destroyed by fire constitute a safety problem, especially in relation to landslide phenomenon.
Ai fenomeni franosi, di smottamento franosi. E questo si verifica anche durante, per esempio, l'incendio stesso.
This also occurs during, for example, the fire itself, which you are, of course, experiencing at first hand, including rock falls. In addition, after the fire, the layer of ash deposited by the fire is impermeable. So in the first few years after the fire, what does rainwater do? It is unable to penetrate the soil, and therefore flows to the surface.
Che cosa fa? Non riesce a penetrare il suolo e quindi defluisce in superficie.
Which leads to erosion, especially when there is heavy rain. In the case of prolonged rainfall, this can even cause debris flows, which is unfortunately what is happening in the Modoni towns. At this point, there is a need for structural measures to counteract rockfalls and landslides on heavy burnt surfaces. And of course, this brings us back to the point I was making earlier.
Per contrastare cadute di massi e frane su superfici fortemente bruciate. E naturalmente ritorna il discorso che vi facevo prima, cioè
unfortunately, these phenomena of arson are increasing more and more, linked above all to the neglect of forests.
Dei boschi. Allora, noi veramente dovremmo prenderci
we should take as our own these parts of the forest.
Queste parti di bosco, di
vegetation, environments that are somehow entrusted to us. And of course, if I do it, you do it, your friends do it.
Io, lo fate voi, lo fanno i vostri amici. È come quella piccola goccia che cade e che cadendo scalpisce la...
And like that little drop that falls, and in falling scratches the rock.
Naturalmente saremo in 2, in 10, in 50, in 100, sempre di più. E questo aiuterà anche gli altri.
There'll be 2 of us, 10 of us, 50 of us, 100 of us, and more of us. And this will help others to behave responsibly towards the environment, and above all, it will help to have not only respect, but also to be, as Pope Francis said, courageous in denouncing behavior that is not.
Comportamenti che invece non lo sono.
Allora, grazie.
So thank you to our experts. I would like to thank Professor Stefania Papa and Professor Luca Fiorani for accepting our invitation.
Per chi
For
volesse
those who would
approfondire
like to
queste
explore
tematiche
these
per orientarsi
issues
tra
in greater
giustizia
depth
ambientale
and find their way
due
through the
cause,
environmental crisis and its causes,
come
especially as a support for
supporto
tackling
per
these topics at school,
anche affrontare a
we
scuola
recommend Professor Luca Fiorani's latest
consigliamo
book
l'ultimo libro del
entitled
professor Luca Fiorani
Happy
dal
Planet.
titolo Happy Planet.
What to do when I can't find a sponsor for 10 cents?
Solitamente lo sponsor sono i propri
Usually
genitori,
the
ma
sponsor
può
is
essere
one's own
anche uno
parents,
zio, un
but
nonno,
it can also be an uncle,
fratello
a
maggiore
grandparent,
o
an
anche
older
voi
brother, or
stessi,
even
perché
yourself.
no?
Why
Come
not?
fare se non troviamo uno
What to
sponsor?
do if we cannot find a
Questo vuol dire
sponsor?
innanzitutto parlare
This
con i
means
genitori, ad
talking to your
esempio,
parents,
raccontare
for
del
example, and
progetto
telling them about the
e del
project
vostro
and your
desiderio
desire to make a
di
small
dare un piccolo
contribution to the
contributo
great
a questo
ideal
grande
of
ideale di
eliminating
creare aziende
injustice in the
al
world.
mondo. Dite
Also
anche che
say that you will strive to do many
tanti atti
energy-saving
di
acts
risparmio
that will
energetico
definitely
che
lead to
costeranno
financial
sicuramente un
savings for
risparmio
your
economico
family.
per la vostra famiglia.
Besides,
Oltre a ridurre il
reducing the
costo delle
cost of your
bollette
energy
con
bills
un'inversione
by reducing waste, you will help to
contribuirete a
reduce the
ridurre
amount
la
of
quantità di
CO2
CO2
released
emessi
into
in
the
atmosfera.
atmosphere.
È
This
proprio
is what
questo
the
il
Energy
senso del
Saving
patto di
Pact is all
risparmio
about.
energetico. È un vero
It
e
is a
proprio
real pact.
Come si deve calcolare esattamente un atto di risparmio energetico? Per esempio, tutte le volte che esco da una stanza e spengo la luce?
Ognuno di noi ha uno stile
Each
di
of us
vita
has a
e di
lifestyle
conseguenza
and
un
therefore
certo
a certain
costo
impact on the
dell'ambiente, più
environment
o meno
to a
alto.
greater or lesser
Per
extent.
qualcuno spegnere la
So
luce
for some
quando
people,
esce da
switching
una
off the light
stanza
when they leave a
porta ad
room
un
leads
effettivo
to real
risparmio,
savings
è una
because it
cosa
is
che
something
non
they are
tutti
not used to
possono
doing.
fare. Dopo un po' di
After
tempo
some
spegnere
time,
la luce sarà
switching off the
diventato
light will have
un'abitudine,
become a
quindi
habit,
bisognerà
and you
cercare
will
di
then have
ridurre
to try further
ulteriormente il
reduce
proprio
your
impatto
environmental
ambientale
impact
con
with
altri
other types
gesti
of energy-saving
immediati
acts.
di risparmio
Whoever, for
energetico.
example,
Chi ad
routinely switches off
esempio
the light
spegne
when leaving a room
abitualmente
must find
la
other
luce quando
possible
esce da
energy
una stanza
savings.
deve
There are plenty of
trovare
them.
altri possibili
For
risparmi
example,
energetici.
avoid
Ce ne sono
printing
tantissimi.
unnecessarily.
Evitate ad
Use your
esempio di
bicycle
stampare
or walk
se
when you
non è
can.
necessario.
Help your
Usate la
parents to
bicicletta o
change the
andate a
light
piedi
bulbs in your
quando
home
potete.
to
Aiutate i vostri genitori a
energy-saving
cambiare le
LED
lampadine in casa
ones.
con quelle a LED.
In
Insomma,
short,
fate il
do what you
possibile perché il
can
vostro
because your
risparmio
energy
energetico
savings are
funzioni.
very valuable.
Chiedete anche nella
You
domanda
ask if
se ci
there are
sono
any
limiti
time
di
limits.
tempo. Beh, gli atti di risparmio
Energy-saving
energetico
acts must
devono
slowly
diventare
become
piena
part of our
parte della
lives,
nostra vita.
must somehow
Devono in
transform
qualche
our
modo
lifestyle.
trasformare il nostro
So from
stile di
this
vita.
point of view, there are
Quindi da
no
questo
time
punto di
limits,
vista non ci
in the
sono
sense that
limiti di
it is
tempo,
not that
nel
when the
senso che
school year
domani
ends, for example,
quando
we
finirà
will start to
l'anno
leave the
scolastico
light on in the house again.
cominceremo a
That is
lasciare
not
la
the
luce
case.
accesa in casa.
However,
Non è così.
the counting of our
Tuttavia, il
actions using the
conteggio dei
card or
nostri
the app
atti,
that we are
usando la
presenting
scheda
today
oppure l'app
is limited to 2 months.
che presentiamo oggi,
So
è
this
limitato
energy-saving
a 2
challenge
mesi.
race will
Quindi questa
start on
specie
the
di
22nd
gare, di
February
sfida
and
al
end on the
risparmio
22nd
energetico
of
partirà
April,
il 22 febbraio
because
e finirà
April
il
22
22
is
aprile.
Earth
Il
Day,
22 aprile
when we can
è la
celebrate these
giornata della
achievements
Terra,
with another
quindi si
event.
potrà festeggiare,
After that day,
questo
we will communicate the
traguardo
results achieved by all of us on the
Dopo quel
project's
giorno
social
sui canali
channels.
social del
Of
progetto
course, you
comunicheremo
can
i
still
risultati
continue to
con
carry out your
voi.
energy-saving actions
Ovviamente voi
afterwards.
potrete comunque continuare a fare i vostri atti di
This
risparmio
is a video
energetico al
tutorial of the app for the Give to Protect the Environment Network project. At the moment, you can only use the app by logging in with or using a Google account. After clicking on the Sign Up with Google button and selecting your account, you are registered and can log into the app. You will find yourself on the Acts page where, with the plus button, you can enter your acts. At the top of the page, you can see the number of your acts, the percentage you are following against your goal of 200 acts, and the number of acts performed by all members.
da tutti gli iscritti.
By clicking on the plus button, you will see this page, where you can choose the category of your eco-act: saving electricity, saving gas, saving water, recycling and reuse, and food waste. And depending on the category chosen, you can see the list of acts associated with that category.
Associato a tale categoria. Potete filtrare l'elenco.
You can filter the list by writing in the act field. For example, by writing the word use, the list will be filtered in this way.
L'elenco verrà filtrato in questo modo.
The list of acts will be expanded over time. So if you do not find your act in the list, for example, use carpooling, you can click on the Suggest as Act button to suggest it. Over time, your suggestions will be taken into account to expand the list of acts.
Nel tempo le vostre proposte verranno prese in considerazione per ampliare l'elenco degli atti.
Once you have selected the item, for example, use public transport, you can also select the date on which you follow this act and press the Submit button. As you can see, I have a badge like the gas symbol indicating my ecological act, and I have performed one act and the percentage is now 0.5%. And I have also contributed to the total number of acts. By clicking on the badge icon, you can go to the information of your act. If you press and hold, you can delete the act, in case it was entered by mistake. On the Groups page, you can see a list of all the groups that have been created. You can filter the list with a search button, and you can join only one group by clicking on the Join button. After you have joined the group, you are able to see the total number of acts of your group on the Acts page. As you can see at the top of the Acts page, your group has performed 8 acts. You can also leave the group and create your own group by clicking on the plus button, entering a unique name, and pressing the Go button. On the info page, you can read information about the project, and you can easily open links to the project's website and Facebook page and Instagram page. This, for example, is the website. Finally, under Settings, you can select the language and country. By deleting your account, your data will be deleted and therefore the community will also lose your acts. So what else can we say? Let's start this solidarity race for the good of the earth and the people who live in it.
Unfortunately, the app is not yet available for iPhones, but the technicians are working on it, so it will definitely be available soon. For the time being, use the paper card and then you can bring everything back to the app once it's available. Please don't denigrate the old paper media. They are still a great tool. And as soon as the app is available for iPhones, we'll let you know on social media. So please stay tuned. And now we are ready to start our concrete commitment, ready to perform everyday simple acts aimed at the care of our earth in respect of all those who live on it. We remind you of the 5 possible fields of action. No to waste of electricity, no to waste of gas, no to waste of water, both recycling and reuse, no to waste of food. By changing our habits a little, we can help trigger those butterfly effects that Professor Mastroianni spoke about. And what we will be able to save in terms of money can be donated to support projects in favor of those who already suffer the effects of climate change. And we must not forget, moreover, that the much talked about energy transition, although necessary, has high costs and risks becoming an accelerator of inequality. If, for example, the cost of petrol rises, who will suffer most? Certainly not those who have large budgets, but those who are already struggling to make ends meet. Like hummingbirds from the ancient African fable you may know, we too have the possibility to bring our drop of water to put out the fire. So come on, we have 2 months to focus our efforts and start making a difference.
Allora vi è piaciuto?
So, did you enjoy it? Remember, February 22nd marks the start of the Pact in just a few days, and we will be doing it for 2 months. So, April 22nd ends on Earth Day. We will participate that day with one of our video clips in the #OnePeople, multimedia marathon organized by Earth Day Italy and the Focolare movement. On May 13th, the last stage, we will all meet again to tell each other how the race went and what were the fruits of our efforts. In the summer, we will publish a magazine dedicated to the events of our meeting on the 13th and to all our activities. And so, in September, when you return to school, you will also find this magazine where you will find all the experiences of this school year. Ciao to all!
Di quest'anno scolastico. Ciao a tutti!